In the lush green forest of Bayelsa State, Nigeria, and resting on the banks of the winding creeks, lay the busy town of Ogbia. It is a rich land. The people of Ogbia were known far and wide for their hospitality and traditions, and in this town lived a woman known as Ebiye. Ebiye was renowned throughout the land not just for her grace and beauty, but for her fairy spirit and her unwavering resolve. Her skin glowed like the finest mahogany, her eyes sparkled like the sunlit waters of the creeks, and her hair was natural and was dark and flowing as the river at night. But Ebiye's beauty was also the cause of much turmoil in her home, as the eldest daughter of her parents, Chief Ayibiri, and his wife, Suitor, were eager for her to get married. Many eligible suitors from Ogbia and beyond had sought her hand, lured by tales of her beauty. However, Ebiye had turned down a lot of suitors, saying, "My beauty is destined for a prince. Only a prince shall take me as a wife." Her words spread like wildfire, reaching even the most distant villages. Mothers and fathers shook their heads in dismay, and young men sighed in frustration. Ebiye's parents grew increasingly worried. They feared that their daughter's pride would lead her down a path of loneliness. "Ebiye, my daughter," her mother Sotonye pleaded one evening as they sat under the great Iroko tree in front of their home. "There is more to a man than his title. Look for kindness. Look for wisdom. A prince may come, but what if he does not come?" But Ebiye was unyielding. "Mother, my beauty deserves the best. I will marry a prince or no one at all." Days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months. Ebiye continued to reject every suitor who came her way, each one more fervent than the last time. Her stubbornness became the talk of the town, and even the elders shook their heads in disapproval. Her parents were at their wits' end. Far from the town, in a secluded part of the forest, where few dared to tread, lived an old wizard named Akede. He was known to the town as a man with great powers, but also with a temperament as unpredictable as the weather. His face was scarred from an old battle with spirit, and his dark hunched back from years of living in solitude. When word of Ebiye's demands reached him, a wicked grin spread across his face. "Such arrogance," Akede muttered to himself. "She must be taught a lesson." The wizard, with his withered hands and ancient chants, began to weave a spell. He conjured an illusion so powerful that even the gods themselves would be fooled. In a matter of moments, the old hunched wizard transformed into a strikingly handsome young man. His skin became smooth and unblemished, his eyes as deep and mesmerizing as the blue lagoon, and his hair as dark as the raven's feathers. He adorned himself in fine robes befitting a prince and mounted a majestic white horse. With a confident smile, he made his way to the town Ogbia. When Akede arrived, the town was buzzing with excitement. The women whispered among themselves, and the men watched in envy as the handsome stranger rode in with such grace and poise. He came down from his horse in the market square and announced, "I am Prince Barnabas of the kingdom of Ikoli. I have heard the beauty of a woman named Ebiye, and I have come to ask for her hand in marriage." Ebiye, who was at the market with her friends, heard the proclamation and rushed over. As soon as she laid eyes on him, she was struck by his extraordinary beauty. Never before had she seen a man so handsome, so princely. She could not believe her fortune. Could it be that her wishes were finally being answered? Her heart fluttered with excitement as she approached him. "I am Ebiye," she said with a smile, her eyes wide with wonder. "And you are truly as handsome as they say, Prince Barnabas." The prince, or rather the wizard Akede, smiled charmingly. "And you, Ebiye, you are even more beautiful than the stories tell. I have traveled far and wide, but I have never seen such grace, such beauty. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" The town erupted in cheers. Finally, Ebiye was about to be married. Her parents heaved a sigh of relief, but there was a caution in their hearts. Something about this prince seemed too perfect, too sudden. They could not put their finger on it, but the old ones in the town muttered prayers under their breath, seeking guidance from the ancestors. Ebiye, blinded by the beauty of her suitor, dismissed all caution. She agreed to marry him, her pride swelling with every passing moment. At last, she thought, my beauty is recognized by a true prince. The next few days were filled with preparations. The entire town of Ogbia came together to prepare for the grandest wedding the town had ever seen. The women prepared the finest meals, and the men set up tents, and the children danced around in excitement. Ebiye was adorned in the most beautiful attire, her skin glowing, her smile brighter than the sun. She was the happiest she had ever been, convinced that she had won the prize she deserved. But as the day of the wedding approached, strange things began to happen at night. Airy whispers could be heard coming from the forest. The river, once calm and peaceful, began to churn. With unexplained turbulence, the chickens in the town stopped laying eggs, and the goats refused to give milk. The elders began to worry. They went to Ebiye's parents with their concerns, but Ebiye's parents were hesitant to call off the wedding and disappoint their daughter once more. On the eve of the wedding, an old woman from the neighboring town, known for her wisdom, came to Ogbia. She asked to speak with Ebiye privately. My child, the old woman said in a low, raspy voice, her eyes sharp and penetrating. Are you certain of the man you are about to marry? Beauty can be deceitful, and not all that glitters is gold. Ebiye, still intoxicated by the charm of her supposed prince, laughed dismissively. You speak in riddles, Mama. Prince Barnabas is handsome and kind. He's everything I have ever wanted. The old woman nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. Very well, my child, but remember, every choice comes with a price. Be sure you are ready to pay this. With that, the old woman left, leaving Ebiye feeling a bit unsettled, but determined not to let anything spoil her big day. The day of the wedding arrived. The town was alive, and music was everywhere, dancing and eating. Ebiye looked more beautiful than ever, her smile radiant. Prince Barnabas arrived looking every bit a dashing groom. The ceremony began with traditional songs and dances, the air filled with joy and celebration. As the sun began to set, casting its color over the town, it was time for the final vows. Just as the priest raised his hands to bless the union, a sudden gust of wind swept through the town, putting out the fires. The crowd was in shock, and a heavy silence fell on them. Then, before their very eyes, the handsome priest began to change. His worn smooth skin wrinkled, his posture hunched, and his face twisted into that of an old scarred man. Shock and screams filled the air as the people realized that the prince was none other than the dreaded wizard Akede. Ebiye, frozen in shock, could only stare in disbelief. No, it can't be, she cried. The old wizard, now back in his true form, laughed, a deep mocking sound that echoed through the town. You wanted a prince, Ebiye, he taunted, and a prince you shall have, in all his forms. The people were terrified, but Akede raised a hand, stopping them from rushing to Ebiye's aid. This marriage will teach you humility, Ebiye. For every day that you fail to see beyond appearances, my true form will reveal itself. You wish to marry for beauty, but now you must live with the consequences of your pride. The people were struck silent, caught between fear and fascination. Ebiye's parents, their faces pale, reached out to their daughter, but she stood still, her mind reeling. She had wanted to marry a prince, to be the envy of all, but now she found herself bound to a man who was two in one, a handsome prince by day and a hideous old wizard by night. What choice will she make now? Will she find a way to break the curse? Or will she learn to live with her fate? The whole town watched with bated breath, waiting to see how the story of Ebiye and her double-faced suitor would unfold. The wedding feast was abandoned, and the joyous music that had filled the air was replaced by a tense, uneasy silence. The people slowly retreated to their homes, whispering amongst themselves, casting fearful glances over their shoulders. Ebiye stood rooted to the spot, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief, as she stared at the grotesque figure of Akede, who only moments ago had appeared as the most handsome prince she had ever laid her eyes on. Her heart was pounding in her chest, and her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. How could this have happened? How could she have been so foolish? The words of the old woman echoed in her mind. Every choice comes with a price. Chief Ayebiri and Sotonye, Ebiye's parents, seeing their daughter's distress, quickly ushered her into their room. The old wizard, now standing alone in the market square, watched them with a knowing smile, his eyes glinting with mischief. Inside their modest home, Ebiye's parents tried to comfort her, but she could not stop trembling. This is all my fault, she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. I was so blinded by my pride, so obsessed with marrying a prince, that I ignored every warning. Her father placed a reassuring hand on her shoulders. We all make mistakes, my daughter, he said gently, but you are strong. We will find a way to undo this curse. Sotonye, Ebiye's mother, nodded, her eyes filled with worry, but also determination. There must be a way out, she said. We will seek counsel from the elders and the gods. They will guide us. But Ebiye was not sure. The weight of her choices hung heavily on her shoulders, and she felt a deep sense of shame. I brought this upon myself, and now I must face the consequences, she muttered. That night, as the town of Ogbia lay under a blanket of darkness, Ebiye could not sleep. She tossed and turned on her bed, her mind racing with thoughts of the days to come. What will life be like? Married to a man who was both beautiful and monstrous. How could she ever look at him without feeling fear and disgust? In the early hours of the morning, when the first rays of the sun began to pierce the night sky, Ebiye made a decision. She will confront the wizard and demand that he undo the curse. She could not live this way, bound to a man who was not what he seemed. With her heart heavy and her resolve firm, she left her home and made her way to the outskirts of the town where Akede had taken up residence. As she approached, she saw him sitting by a small fire, his appearance once again transformed into that of the handsome prince. His eyes were closed, and a serene expression rested on his face as if he were meditating. Ebiye took a deep breath and stepped forward. Akede, she called out, her voice trembling but strong. I demand that you leave this course. You tricked me into marrying you, and now you must make it right. The wizard opened his eyes slowly, his expression calm and unbothered. I tricked no one, Ebiye, he replied smoothly. I merely gave you what you wanted and what you deserved, a prince to wed. It is you who must learn to see beyond appearances, to understand that true beauty lies not in appearances, but in the heart. Ebiye's eyes narrowed, anger bubbling inside her. You speak in riddles, she snapped. But I see now that it is you who are truly ugly, both inside and outside. Akede chuckled softly, shaking his head. Perhaps, he said, but remember, Ebiye, you have married me before the gods and the spirits of the ancestors. Our union is sealed, and until you learn the lesson you are meant to learn, this curse will remain. Frustration and despair filled Ebiye's heart. She felt trapped like a bird in a cage. What lesson? She demanded. What do I need to do? And what do I need to learn? The expression of the wizard softened slightly, and for a moment there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. That love cannot be forced or demanded, he said quietly. That beauty is fleeting, and true worth comes within. Until you understand this, Ebiye, you will remain bound to me, both day and night. With those words, he stood up and began to walk away, leaving Ebiye standing there, stunned and confused. She watched him go, a mix of emotions swirling within her: anger, fear, sorrow, and a flicker of something else, something she could not quite name. Over the next few days, Ebiye struggled to adjust to her new reality. She avoided the wizard during the day, finding solace in the company of her family and friends. But at night, when his true form emerged, she felt a deep sense of dread. She could not bear to look at him, and she often retreated to her room, locking the door behind her. The town, too, was uneasy. They had celebrated what they thought would be the grandest wedding in Ogbia, only to have it turn into a nightmare. Many whispered that Ebiye had been cursed for her pride, while others felt sympathy for her plight. But none dared to interfere for fear of incurring Akede's wrath. As the days passed, however, something strange began to happen. During the daytime, when Akede appeared as the handsome prince, Ebiye found herself drawn to him, despite her better judgment. He was kind and gentle, always offering her a smile or a word of comfort. He helped her with chores, listened to her speak, and often told her stories of distant lands and forgotten gods. And though she tried to resist, she found herself enjoying his company. She laughed at his jokes, listened intently to his stories, and sometimes, when she thought no one was looking, she would steal a glance at him, admiring his strong jawline and the softness in his eyes. But at night, when his true form was revealed, all her fears and doubts returned. She would remember the old scarred face, the hunched back, and the cruel twist of his mouth, and she would shudder with revulsion. She could not reconcile the two images in her mind, the handsome prince and the hideous wizard, and it drove her mad with confusion. One evening, as the sun began to set and the time of the transformation drew nearer, Ebiye found herself standing by the river, lost in thought. She watched as the water flowed past, its surface glimmering in the fading light, and she felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. Suddenly, she heard a rustling behind her. She turned to see Akede, still in his handsome guise, standing there, watching her with a curious expression. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. He smiled gently. "I only wish to talk," he said, "to understand you better, Ebiye." "What is there to understand?" she muttered. "I'm a foolish girl who made a foolish choice, and now I must live with it." Akede stepped closer, his eyes softening. "You're not foolish, Ebiye," he said. "You are simply human. We all make mistakes, but it is how we learn from them that truly matters." For a moment, they stood in silence. The only sound was the gentle babbling of the river. Then, almost without thinking, Ebiye spoke. "Why do you do this?" she asked. "Why torment me so?" Akede's expression grew serious. "Because I see potential in you, Ebiye," he said softly. "I see a woman who is strong, who is brave, who could become so much more than she is. But first, you must learn to see your heart, not just your eyes." His words struck a chord within her, and she felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time, she saw something beyond the surface, a flicker of sadness, of loneliness, hidden deep within his eyes. "Who are you really?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. The wizard smiled sadly. "I am the person you see," he replied, "a man who has lived many lives, seen many things, and learnt many lessons. Perhaps one day you will understand." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Ebiye standing by the river, her mind a whirl of questions, and her heart heavy with uncertainty. As the days turned into weeks, Ebiye found herself drawn more and more to the wizard. She began to see beyond his outward appearances, to the man beneath, a man who was wise, who was kind, who had a depth of understanding that she had never encountered before. And slowly, ever so slowly, her feelings began to change. But the nights were still difficult. Each time the transformation occurred, she was reminded of the curse, of the deception, and her heart would harden once more. She could not fully accept him, could not let go of her fear and revulsion. One night, unable to sleep, she sat by her window, gazing out at the moonlit village. Her mind was filled with turmoil. Her heart turned between what she saw and what she felt. She knew she had a choice to make, a choice that would determine the rest of her life. Would she continue to live in fear and resentment, bound to a wizard? Ebiye spent many sleepless nights pondering her dilemma. Yet, something deep within her was changing. She was beginning to see Akede not as a curse, but as a challenge, a test of her own. One day, driven by a growing sense of resolve, Ebiye sought out the old woman who had warned her before her wedding. She found her near the village shrine, tending to the sacred grove. "Grandma," Ebiye began, her voice soft but filled with determination. "I wish to learn. You warned me and I did not listen. But now I wish to understand. How can I see beyond appearances? How can I learn the lesson that the wizard speaks of?" The old woman looked up, her eyes filled with both wisdom and kindness. She smiled a knowing smile that seemed to carry the weight of many lifetimes. "Ah, child," she said gently, "the lesson you seek cannot be taught by words alone. It must be felt, it must be experienced. You must learn to look beyond the surface, to see with your heart, and to accept that which is hidden from the eyes." Ebiye nodded, her resolve firming. She understood now that her journey was not just about enduring the curse, but also about transforming herself. At home, Ebiye found Akede sitting outside, his eyes closed, his face serene in the twilight. She sat down beside him, her heart beating fast, her mind clear. "Akede," she began, her voice steady, "I have been thinking. I do not wish to live my life in fear or hatred. I want to understand you, to truly know you, not just as a handsome prince or a feared wizard, but as the man that you are within. Will you help me do that?" The wizard opened his eyes and looked at her, a flicker of surprise and warmth crossing his face. "I will, Ebiye," he repeated. "I will. But know that the path is not easy. It requires patience, courage, and the willingness to see beyond what is right before your eyes." Ebiye nodded. "I'm ready," she said, her voice filled with newfound strength. "Teach me." From that day on, Ebiye made a conscious effort to spend more time with Akede, not just during the day when he was in his princely form, but also at night when his true form emerged. She pushed herself to look past his outward appearance, to listen to his words, to learn from his experiences, and to find the goodness in him. At first, it was difficult. The fear and revulsion she felt at night were hard to overcome. But slowly, as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, she began to see Akede differently. She saw the kindness in his actions, the wisdom in his words, and the deep sadness in his eyes that spoke of a life filled with both joy and sorrow. She began to realize that his outward appearance mattered less and less. What mattered was the person he was, the person who had chosen to teach her, who had chosen to guide her, even when she had been lost in her own pride and vanity. One night, as they sat by the river under a starlit sky, Ebiye looked at Akede and saw him not as a prince or a wizard, but simply as a man who had lived many lives, who had seen many things, who, despite everything, had chosen to help her grow. "I see you now," she whispered, her voice filled with emotions. "I see you for who you truly are, not for what you appear to be." Akede smiled, a genuine smile, warm smile that reached his eyes. "And that, Abiye," he said softly, "is the lesson I hope you will learn." Suddenly, a soft wind began to blow through the trees, and the air around them seemed to shimmer. Ebiye watched in awe as a radiant light surrounded Akede. His form began to shift, But this time it was different. The change was not from prince to wizard or from young to old. Instead, the light enveloped him, merging the two forms into one harmonious being, neither fully young nor old, neither fully handsome nor hideous, but a blend of both, balanced and complete. Ebiye was shocked as she watched the transformation. What is happening? She asked, her eyes wide with wonder. Akede chuckled softly. The curse is lifted, he explained. You have learned to see beyond appearances, to love not for beauty or status, but for what lies within. And in doing so, you have broken the spell. Ebiye felt a surge of joy and relief wash over her. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were tears of happiness. She reached out and took Akede's hand, feeling the warmth of his touch. Thank you, she whispered, for showing me the way, for teaching me to see with my heart. Akede squeezed her hand gently. And thank you, Ebiye, for having the courage to learn. You have grown into a woman of great wisdom and strength. Your beauty now truly shines from within. The people of the town, who had been watching from a distance, began to cheer. They could see the transformation, the light that surrounded Ebiye and Akede, and they knew that something extraordinary had happened. They rushed forward, celebrating the end of the curse and the beginning of a new chapter for their beloved Ebiye. From that day on, Ebiye and Akede lived together in harmony, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. Together, they taught the people of Ogbia and the neighboring villages the importance of looking beyond the surface, of seeing with the heart, and finding beauty in all its forms. And so the story of Ebiye and her double-faced suitor became a cherished tale, passed down from generation to generation,